The God that many people worship today, Yahweh, well, it turns out he wasn't always the supreme, solitary deity of the ancient Israelites. So the big question is, where did he actually come from? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to have to jump in our time machine and head way back. We're talking about the late Bronze Age, and the religious world of that time in the ancient Levant. Well, it was crowded, absolutely packed with gods. So picture this. This ancient world was polytheistic, right? It was ruled by a whole divine family, kind of like a heavenly royal court. At the very top, you had the patriarch, the creator god, a figure named El. He was the father of all the other gods. His wife was the mother goddess Asherah, and one of their most powerful kids was the storm god, Baal. This was the pantheon, the whole divine crew that ran the show in this part of the world. And you know, the proof that El was originally the top god is hiding in plain sight. Just look at the name Israel. It literally has his name in it. It means something like El rules or El contends. It shows us that for the earliest Israelites, El was their guy. He was their high god. Yahweh wasn't really the main character, not yet anyway. So, if El was the chief god, the king of the pantheon, that brings us right back to our central mystery. Where in the world did Yahweh come from? Okay, so the first clues we get, they don't even pop up in Israel. They come from Egypt. We have these ancient Egyptian inscriptions from around 1350 BCE that mention these nomads from the southern deserts called the Shasu of YHW. And scholars are pretty convinced that this YHW is the earliest reference we have to the name Yahweh. And get this reference shows up centuries before the name Yahweh ever appears on an inscription in Israel proper. And what's really fascinating is that the Bible itself seems to remember this. Some of the oldest poetry you'll find in the entire Hebrew Bible, like this piece from the Song of Deborah, doesn't talk about Yahweh as a local Canaanite god. Nope, it remembers him as an outsider, this powerful, fearsome storm god marching up from the south, from the desert lands of Edom and Seir. So when this warrior god from the south starts moving north, he doesn't just kick down the door and take over. The first step was integration. He had to be brought into the existing divine family, the one ruled by El. You see, early biblical texts and texts from other cultures around them all talk about this divine council. Think of it like a heavenly board of directors. The Bible even calls them the Bnei El, which means the sons of El. The picture we get is that Yahweh was first understood as being one of these sons. He was powerful, for sure, but he was still one god among many, serving on his father El's council. And this is where the story gets really wild. Archaeologists have found these inscriptions from the 8th century BCE with blessings that mention Yahweh and his Asherah. That's right. It suggests that at least some ancient Israelites worshipped Yahweh with a female partner. And who was Asherah? She was the very same mother goddess who was originally El's wife. So Yahweh hadn't just joined the family. He'd apparently taken his father's consort. Over the next few centuries, everything is about to change. We see this huge theological revolution kick off. Some scholars call it pantheon reduction. Basically, this big divine family was about to get a whole lot smaller. So how did this happen? Well, it was basically a divine merger, or maybe even a hostile takeover. Yahweh, this mighty storm god, starts absorbing all the top-tier attributes and titles of the old boss, El. He becomes the creator, the father figure, the eternal one. He also grabs some of the storm god characteristics of Baal. Slowly but surely, Yahweh is becoming this kind of all-in-one superstar deity, and all the other gods are starting to look, well, redundant. Now, this didn't happen like flipping a switch. It was a gradual evolution. You start with good old-fashioned polytheism. Lots of gods. You worship lots of gods. Then you shift to something called monolatry, which is the idea that, okay, other gods might exist, but we only worship our God, Yahweh. And from there, you finally land on true monotheism, the radical belief that only Yahweh has ever existed, and all those other gods are just fake. So what was the final push? What was the catalyst that took the religion of Israel from worshiping one God among many to believing in only one God, period? The answer, according to most scholars, was total and complete catastrophe. When the huge empires of Assyria and then Babylon came in and destroyed the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, it created this massive theological crisis. I mean, think about it. Your nation is gone, you're exiled. You'd start asking some pretty tough questions, right? Like, how could our God Yahweh let this happen? Is he weaker than the gods of Babylon? And the answer the Israelite thinkers came up with was absolutely world-changing. You see it right here in texts like 2nd Isaiah. Yahweh hadn't been defeated. Oh no, he was the one pulling all the strings. He was the only God in charge of all nations and all of history. He had used Babylon as his tool to punish his own people. He didn't just control the good stuff, he controlled the bad stuff too. This wasn't a national God anymore. This was a universal one. And with this radical new idea, the merger was complete. The old father god, El, was now totally folded into Yahweh. El's ancient name, Elohim, just became another word for God, the one singular universal God. The memory of a divine father, a goddess wife, and a whole council of gods, it was systematically erased, edited right out of the story, which laid the foundation for Judaism and, of course, later on for Christianity and Islam.